What's up guys, my name is MonsterDust and today I'm going to be doing a kind of different video. I've done a couple Yu-Gi-Oh videos so far and I thought today I might as well go ahead and teach you guys how to play the game. So this is going to be the start of a multi-episode series where I teach the basics of Yu-Gi-Oh. Today we're just going to start with the different types of cards that there are, and it won't be until next episode that we get into the actual gameplay. But for now I'm going to explain types of cards, what the symbols on the cards mean, and how you use each type of card. Alright, so we're going to start with the basic, just a normal monster. I specifically chose this one because it's the perfect example of a normal monster. It's level 4, it's relatively high attack, relatively high defense. So what you do with a normal monster is you either summon it right away or you set it. You summon it by playing it in face-up attack position where it's vertical like this. Or you can set it in face-down defense position where it's horizontal and flipped face down. Now the levels that you see are the stars right here, the orange and yellow stars. And a level 4 or lower monster can be normal summoned. A level 5 or 6 monster, like this next one I'll show you, he's level 6, he requires you to tribute one of your monsters that's already on the field. Level 7 or higher needs 2 tributes. And there are some cards, really high level, that specifically tell you in their card effect that you need to tribute 3. So that's the basic for a normal monster. It's called a normal monster because it's non-effect. It has no effect, it's just, this is all text to just give some background to the card. Now what I'm going to show you is an effect monster. An effect monster is a monster who has a certain ability that activates either on summon or once per turn when you choose to activate it, or just once when a certain condition is met. This one, as you can see, says his effect goes off when he's tribute summoned. Other than that, he's basically just a monster. He's a level 6, requires 1 tribute, 2400 attack, 1000 defense. Let me go ahead and explain attack and defense now. So the attack, the 2400, when he's in face-up attack position, that's what he uses when you have him attack other monsters. If an attack position monster attacks a defense position monster, you use the first monster's attack and the second monster's defense. But if they're both in attack position, you just use the attack. If an attack position monster destroys a defense position monster because its defense was lower, the other player takes no damage. Damage is only done when an attack position monster destroys another attack position monster with lower attack. Alright, so now that you know about normal monsters, effect monsters, levels, and battle stats, we're going to move on to ritual monsters. Now these ones are kind of weird. They're almost like high level monsters. I know you see he's level 4, but they actually require tributes, and they require to use a special card for those tributes. They require you to use this, a ritual spell. As you can see, this ritual spell is used to ritual summon any Nekroz ritual monsters. You must tribute monsters from your hand or side of field whose levels equal the level of the ritual monster you want to summon. I specifically chose a Nekroz ritual with a Nekroz monster to demonstrate. So Yugioh, let's say he's in my hand, and I have either on the field or also in my hand, I have this guy, Noble Knight Artorias. What you do is you activate the ritual spell, you send this guy either from hand or from field to the graveyard, and you get to bring this one out. That's how rituals work. And monsters of any type, ritual, pendulum, Tuner, XZ, Synchro, all the others I'm going to get into later, they can all also be effect monsters. As you can see, this is a ritual monster, but it's also an effect monster. So now that we know about that, let's go ahead and move on to tuners. Um, Tuners do go hand in hand with synchro monsters. What a tuner does, it's you use it and another monster of any kind to synchro summon one of these white monsters. Uh, as you can see, the first part of its effect says one tuner plus one or more non-tuner monsters. And this is how we get into synchro summoning. Now, how synchro summoning works is you see this is a level 8 synchro monster. So you would need this guy, a tuner. He's level 3, so you would need monsters or a monster whose levels add up to 5, and you would synchro summon with this as your tuner. The levels just need to add up to that 8. So you could use this guy and this Toon Cyber Dragon here, since he's a level 5 monster. You just send them from field to graveyard, and you can synchro summon your synchro monster. Alright, now we'll talk about normal pendulums. This right here is a pendulum card. These got introduced somewhat recently. It was last year. And they kind of made the game a little confusing, but overall it's still, they're not too difficult to understand. A pendulum monster is just a normal monster by all means while he's in your hand or normal summoned onto the field. But what he can also do is be placed into your pendulum zones, which are to the left and right of your field. And you can see his scale is 3. Now, pendulum monsters, when you have 2 activated, you can special summon monsters all at once whose levels are between their scales. So if you have this guy, a scale 3, and let's say a scale 7, you can all at once special summon monsters from your hand whose levels are between 3 and 7. So level 4 monsters, 5, and 6. Another thing you should know about pendulums is that when they're destroyed, whether they're destroyed while in the pendulum zone or destroyed as monsters on the field, instead of going to your graveyard, they go face up in your extra deck. And pendulum monsters, when you have scales set, they can be pendulum summoned from the extra deck as long as their level is between your scales. This is an effect pendulum. This is essentially just a repetition of the normal monster to effect monster. I just thought I should add this to let you guys know that pendulums can also have effects. They can have both a pendulum effect for when they're in your pendulum zone and a monster effect for when they're on the field as a monster. Now we're going to get into the weirder categories of monsters. These are monsters that even playing at a tournament, you're probably not going to see that often. This one is called a Gemini monster. What a Gemini monster is while face up on the field or in the graveyard, it's a normal monster by all means. However, your next turn, or any turn other than the turn you normal summoned it or tribute summoned it, you can activate its effect to normal summon it a second time to have it become an effect monster. It's a weird little gimmick, and a lot of people don't like it because there's no point to it. It's kind of like if you want it to have an effect, it should have just been an effect monster. You should just be using effect monsters instead of something that you have to use another normal summon on to get its effect off. The next type of monster we have here are toons. They're actually the only archetype to have their own monster type as well. Toons all work the same way. You should have the spell called Toon World on the field. And usually if your opponent controls monsters that are non-toons, and you control Toon World, Toon monsters can attack your opponent directly. But usually, they cannot attack the turn they are summoned, and that's their gimmick. They can't attack the turn they're summoned, but if you're patient and you wait till next turn, they can attack directly even if your opponent has monsters on the field. And that gives them a huge edge in a battle. The next one here is monsters that I just actually recently learned about while preparing this video. This is called a spirit monster. What spirit monsters do are, most of them have the effect that they can't be special summoned at all by anything. But when normal summoned, at the end of the turn, they're sent back to your hand. That's good for if they have an effect you want to use, but your opponent has big monsters that are scary, and you don't want to have to sacrifice this to your opponent's next attack. You can normal summon it, activate its effect, use the effect, and then end phase, bring it back to your hand. So they're pretty cool. This monster is called a union, and unions are kind of weird. They equip themselves to other monsters and give the equipped monsters new effects. That's the basics of it. They're kind of simple. The effect can be anything from like just added attack or an actual effect, like once per turn you can destroy an opponent's monster, just to give an example. Now we're going to move away from monsters. This is a spell, just a normal spell. This is one that's used in most decks. A spell is just a card that you can activate so long as its conditions can be met. Like this card, Dark Hole, destroys all monsters on the field. If there are no monsters on the field, you can't activate it. Which, I mean, you wouldn't want to anyway. If you're going to use it, it should have a purpose. This one is called a quick play spell. Now, a quick play spell can be used at any point during your turn. Regular spells can only be used during what is called your main phase 1 and your main phase 2. However, Mystical Space Typhoon being a quick play, it can be used during standby, draw phase, main phase, battle phase, main phase 2, or end phase. It can be used anytime during your turn. If you want to use it on your opponent's turn, you can set it face down in your spell and trap zone, and then it works the same way. Just during your opponent's turn, you can activate it at any point whenever you want. The next kind is called a continuous spell, and it's called that because it's just, by all means, it's a normal spell. It has an effect that you would use once per turn, but it doesn't go away after a one-time use. It stays on the field, and you can activate the effect each turn whenever you want. This is a field spell. Field spells have their own zones. You don't have to put it in your back row with your other spells and traps. They have their own zone at the top left of the field, just above your extra deck. Field spells, there are generic ones, but most of them go along with an archetype. Like this you saw in my latest Yu-Gi-Oh video. This is the Zephyra field spell, so it has effects that help out Zephyras. Like when it's activated, you can add a Zephyra from your deck to your hand. Each field spell is different, but usually they'll offer some kind of bonus to whatever archetype they support. This is a ritual spell. We already went over it, but we'll go back over it again. You activate a ritual spell, and you tribute monsters, either from hand or from your side of the field, and you special summon a ritual monster. That's basically how they work. This is an equip spell. Like with unions, you equip them to one monster and it gives that monster an added effect. This one is a relatively good one. It's called Mist Body. When equipped, the equipped monster can't be destroyed by battle. So it's good for stalling. But that's basically how equipped spells work. This is a trap card. How you use trap cards is you set them face down in your spell and trap zone, and then whenever the conditions are met, except for the turn they are set, you can't activate a trap the turn it's set. But at any point after that, whenever its conditions are met, you activate it. Like this one activates when your opponent summons a monster. So when your opponent summons a monster with 1500 or more attack, destroy that monster and banish it instead of sending it to the graveyard. If a card is banished, it is removed from the game. as opposed to being sent to the graveyard where another card can bring it back. This is called a counter trap. This kind of trap is has the highest spell speed. What spell speed is the system that determines what can counteract what. Spell speed goes any spell, continuous spell, ritual spell, field spell, equip spell are all spell speed 1. A face down quick play or a set trap are spell speed 2, meaning if they are activated, you can't activate any of these in response. And a counter trap is spell speed 3, which is the highest. And this means that only other counter traps can be activated in response to a counter trap. And now a counter trap works the same way that a regular trap does, aside from the higher spell speed. Just if its conditions are met, you can activate it. Now this is a continuous trap. It works the same way as a continuous spell, except it, like a trap, any other trap card, has to be set first and then activated on any subsequent turn. And its effect is constant, which is why it's called a continuous trap. And this one is a pretty popular one called Vanity's Emptiness, and it just says, neither player can special summon monsters. However, if a card is sent from the deck or field to your graveyard, this card is destroyed. Alright, so now that we've gone over the different types of cards that you would see in the main deck, we're going to move on to what's called the extra deck. You've already seen the Synchro, but to recap, a tuner and a monster or monsters whose levels all add up to the level of the Synchro monster can be sent from your field to grave to special summon a Synchro monster from your extra deck. Now this is called a fusion monster, and fusion monsters work differently. I'll go ahead and show you. This right here is called Polymerization. It's the card that can fusion summon any fusion monster. There are some fusion monsters who don't require polymerization, and they use what is called contact fusion, where if you have both of the required materials, like this one needs Elemental Hero Avion and Elemental Hero Burstinatrix, but a monster that uses contact fusion, if both of its materials are face up on your field, you can shuffle them into the deck and special summon the fusion monster that way. So fusion monsters are just meant to give you an edge, as opposed to having to summon and then tribute. You can use polymerization and send them from your hand to grave and then special summon a big monster like this. They're pretty useful. There are some decks that revolve entirely around fusion, and they're pretty cool. They're one of my favorite types of cards in the game. And to finish up, we have what's called an XZ monster. People pronounce it differently because of the way it looks. It can be called XYZ, Exceed, or XZ. And what it does is you use two monsters of the same level. You notice that its stars are a different color. They're black and gold. And these are called ranks instead of levels. And you summon this by using two monsters of the same level, setting them on top of each other and turning them sideways so they are in face-up defense position, and then you put this on top of them. And those monsters become its XZ material. And usually they'll have an effect that involves their XZ material. Like this one, when any player's monster declares an attack, you detach an XZ material, which means you send one of its XZ materials to the graveyard, and then you can negate the attack. So that's how XZ monsters work. Next time we'll be going over the turn order, and hopefully I'll be able to show you an actual duel where we use the different kinds of cards so I can have a live demonstration of how everything works. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if this was helpful, and happy dueling. This is Monster Dust, signing off.